Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first ever episode of Teen BS. I am your host, Henry Mayashiro.
And I am Sully Givens, and this is Teen BS.
Ladies and gentlemen, our episode today is on the defunding of the public education system. We've brought in a special guest here from Brunswick. This is
Kyle McGann.
Welcome, Kyle. It's a pleasure having you on the podcast.
It's a pleasure being here.
I'm glad you're enjoying yourself. Got your water there? You ready for a day?
Yeah, I'm ready.
That's great. Now, the importance of this podcast is to just let teenage voices be heard. We're the future, we're the possibilities. And it's important that we talk about, real world stuff. And honestly, our ideas should be more important to society than they are right now. Mm-hmm. So, let's get into it.
Okay, we're talking about the defunding of the Department of Education, which is a federal department. Now, doing this research, if you're watching, you might not know as much about it as other people, and I will give you a background on what exactly is the Department of Education, how it has come about, and what we kind of see in the present day. So in 1979, Congress did create the Department of Education to centralize education under federal control so that it could have federal learning standards that everyone in the United States could attain to. In the 80s and 90s, however, the Department of Education was nearly abolished by President Reagan, as well as corruption being discovered by multiple levels, including very high up. More recently, in the 2008, Obama doubled the spending for the Department of Education, which really helped students get where they needed to go for learning. In 2015, federal learning standards were not met, so it did end up crashing back down. And tension started to build once more about maybe defunding or destroying the department entirely. And then, of course, very, very recently, in 2025, the Trump administration did defund the Department of Education. And for the reasoning behind that, as far as we know, was that the administration wanted to divert funds to other departments and other agencies within the government. They also cited that the Department of Education has not met their learning goals over the last decade, as well as also there were many universities that did not allow enough viewpoint diversity, which is a wide range of factors when considering acceptance decisions in college. And they have not cracked down hard enough on anti-Semitic protests. And that is where we stand today.
Yeah, so the number one question I have is, why are we defunding the Department of Education in the first place? What is the relevance to this?
Well, I think when we look at defunding of the Department of Education, we really need to look at where those funds are being advocated towards or turned towards. And I think really the best way to use it, or to describe it, I think, would probably be reforming or strengthening the standards. The Department of Education is really good for a lot of 504 IEP plans, and it's really good at advocating funding for that. But other programs like school lunches and health and all can be run through Department of Agriculture or Health and Human Services. And I really think the main goal of this was purely to advocate these to different departments where it's particularly their job to handle that.
Yeah, I mean, that's great and all, except for one major problem. We're not paying the people who work in the Department of Education enough. I mean, and I'm talking about the lower levels, the bus drivers, the teachers. And, obviously I understand salary for a government job is going to depend on county and stuff. But either way, Frederick County's starting salary is in the ballpark of about, with a master's degree, is about $40,000 starting. I mean, it gets better later on, but come on. These are teachers. These are people who are building the future of America.
Yeah, and I get that too. I think when it really comes down to the different arguments on both sides, I mean, if you are standing for wanting to defund the Department of Education, then it kind of makes sense from your viewpoint, because you're like, well, the department hasn't really worked in the last decade. Learning standards haven't been reached, like I mentioned. So why not destroy it? Why not build it back up, something new, something that the states can lead? But, you know, when you look at it from the other side, you can really argue that you need more support for federal learning standards, and that the Department of Education should stay and should get even stronger, should get more funding for teachers, for bus drivers, for anything like that. That way, the federal government can push it forward. So I think it's really an argument between federal versus state control.
I think it definitely is. I think one thing that's very important to notice is the federal government, when advocating these funds, has very little control over how they are used in a certain way. They're granted based off of MCAT testing and other testing programs like that, but there really isn't much control over how they're being used or how they're being allocated. And I think that's a big part of where state funding comes in. The state can way easier advocate or move those funds around to different departments as it's needed. And I actually want to talk about that because once again, school funding hasn't increased from the state of Maryland in the past 2 or 3 years now. And I actually want to talk about that because it's interesting. The deficit for FCPS as well as the state deficit, which is really causing an issue.
FCPS being Frederick County?
Frederick County Public Schools in Maryland. But I really think that's an interesting thing to talk about, because one key note is when Wes Moore came in the office, we actually had a little bit of a surplus. I believe it was a couple million in a surplus budget. And then after Wes Moore came into office, the state of Maryland is currently at $1.5 billion in debt. And Frederick County Public Schools in Maryland is also in debt. While it's not publicly stated how much, they did emphasize to local news organizations that they are facing a shortfall in the deficit currently.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree. I can agree with that. There are a lot of problems with the Department of Education. And I agree with Sully. I think, we gotta rebuild it. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed. I am definitely one for that. My biggest problem, though, is defunding the public education system isn't fixing it. It's just killing it for no reason when it can be a valuable system. It's something that we can go on to use. I mean, look, here at Brunswick, you guys know the turf football field we have, right? Obviously, I think that was like a $3 million.
It was definitely a very substantial cost.
Right, it was a huge payment, for that. And that's a problem because, well, I'm an athlete. I love playing my sports. There's other things that we need that would have been more important than a turf football field or stuff like that. So while I agree that funds and other things need to go into better places, my problem is that this is a system people still need. I mean, and was the point of us paying taxes for a system that's being defunded? Where's our taxes going?
So, real quick, first thing I want to talk about. So currently, a new turf football field this year in 2026, $780,000, which is actually how much the county is paying for Urbana High School's new turf football field this year. And then also about where taxes are going. The funding isn't necessarily just being pulled away and kept by the federal government or the House.
By like people in power or anything.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
not.
It's
yes.
just reallocated.
Yes,
somewhere.
it's being, rather than having the Department of Education deal with like school lunch programs, they're moving that funding over to Health and Human Services or Department of Agriculture, and they can deal with that. It's really just moving funding around. It's not necessarily taking and keeping or taking and being.
They are taking it. That's why it's being defunded.
It's not. yes, it's being defunded, but it's not like the government is just taking it away from those programs. They're taking that and putting it into new programs under new government organizations that can better suit those people that are using them.